Booktube, Science Fiction Reads here with another edition of Recent Reads and Book Haul. I have not read as much as I would have liked the past couple weeks. I've had poor health, and you'd think when you're off work lying around ill, there'd be nothing better to do but read, but I'm just never in the mood to read when I'm not well. So I only read two things, but they're related to my recent video, so I'll talk about that, and they're related to some new books I bought. But I also just wanted to take a quick second to just thank my subscribers, because I hit 1,000 subscribers a couple days ago, which I never thought possible when I started this channel. I thought maybe I'll get to 100 in a couple months, and if I do, I'll keep going. So, and we did it all without ever saying, please like and subscribe, because I don't care. I've already, everything from here is a bonus, really, because I never expected to get, this much engagement. I love talking in the comments, even though I tend to take a couple days to respond to people. Got to work on that. But I never thought I'd get this far. So it's crazy. It's all just a bonus from now on. So thanks to all my subscribers. And yeah, it's been fun. I think it's been probably a year and a half, a little more, since I really started posting semi-regularly, and only in the last 6 months I've really started posting more often. So yeah, thank you. Still can't believe it. But let's launch into what I read the past couple weeks. My last video was something quite different from my usual stuff. I just felt like doing an in-depth, well, not in-depth, but more in-depth than anything I've done before, just a look at one of my favorite series, Neil Asher's Polity books. And what kind of got me in the mood for that was just taking a brief glance at one of his more recent publications of short stories, Lockdown Tales. I think this is from 2020. And I knew from the blurb on the front and from a novella he published separately, I think this came first, the Bosch. This was the first hint that he was thinking about the future of the polity. And I'm not going to go into much detail. You can check out my previous video if anyone interested in the Neil Asher stuff. But I just found the idea so intriguing, having read so much of his polity stuff, to read about the future of that world. So I read Lockdown Tales, and before I even finished, I bought the second collection of short stories called Lockdown Tales 2. But anyway, the highlights here would be the Relict, which was a post-polity story about this guy from the past who shows up on this planet, which has a bizarre culture on it now. Human, well, sort of human culture, species. And he kind of ingratiates himself, inserts himself into the society, but he has ulterior motives. There's something he needs to dig up that he has a connection to from the far past. That was cool. Another neat one was Plenty. Yeah, I think it was Plenty, which again involves a guy digging something up. This time it's a guy who crash landed on a planet sometime in the far future of the polity. The polity's gone. He's been living there for 15 years or so on his own, barely surviving, and then one day he stumbles across a golem in the ground, buried. A golem in Asher's world is just androids. He calls them golems, and they're my favorite example of androids in any fiction are his golems. They're just awesome. So he digs her up, and in his spare time he tries to get her running again, and sure enough, she comes back to life. She's 1,000 years out of date, and they become fast friends, and that was a good one. Not going to spoil any endings. And was it Dr. Whip, I think, had a return of a character from some of the novels. I think, yeah. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, so much so that, yeah, before I was even done, I ordered Lockdown Tales 2, which came out, I think, last year. Oh, no, it came out this February. Okay. Yeah, that does make sense, yeah. So This one was less the future of the polity. I think the previous one, I believe, was 100% future polity stories. This one, a couple from the future, a couple taking place during the polity, and a couple that aren't even polity stories. My favorite from this would have been the very first one, Xenovore, which has some polity citizens in some sort of bizarre scenario with some sort of alien creature. They're held captive by a weird alien creature that we've never read about in the polity before, but we know it's a polity story. And you come to find out that maybe this takes place in the far future, and these people are far removed from their own time and place. That was a good one. Probably my favorite post-polity story. One of my favorite Neil Asher stories. It was really, really good. And at the very end, just hints of a potential, just awesome space opera story. What those characters end up going on to do would have made a great space opera story, basically. So those were awesome. And that's all I read since reading the Ringwald books, because I've just not been well, and busy too, now and then. So then there's a couple things I bought. We'll stick with Neil Asher for now. I've been waiting for his third most recent book, I guess, to be published in the smaller format, so it will fit up on my shelves. You know, they're all the same format. So I've been waiting for Weaponized, which chronologically I believe is the earliest polity novel. It takes place, I believe, during the Quiet War, which in my previous video, I explained that the Quiet War was early on in the, well, I guess it basically pre-polity, or the very beginning of the polity, when Earth's AIs just kind of took over in a mostly bloodless usurpation of humanity's power, basically, for the good. But so this takes place early on, a standalone in the polity. And then something quite different, still Neil Asher. This was just published like 2 days ago. Fantastical. These are Neil Asher's fantasy stories, which I've never read a Neil Asher fantasy story. A couple of these have been published. I think it's in the foreword it says in the 80s they were published in magazines. The rest have never seen the light of day. He's worked on them since for this publication, which I believe is just this is just self-published. But it's so new that the foreword says it was written April 20th, which was 5 days ago. So pretty neat to have it so fresh. I might just start reading this because I'm still kind of in a Neil Asher mood, and I'm very curious to read his fantasy. So the only other person I more so want to read fantasy from is Alistair Reynolds, who I think once or twice in interviews has alluded to writing a fantasy story that's just been on his computer for years or something, or an idea he had or something like that. And I've just been like, publish it. Do what Asher does. He gets bored and just self-publishes his own stuff, which is awesome. So I'm looking forward to that. That's the end of the Asher stuff. I found another Larry Niven, Jerry Pournelle book, Inferno, with a nice, pretty much uncracked, well, yeah, there's a crack. Decent shape. Sounds pretty wild, like a trip through hell or something. I didn't really read much about it. It was just a Niven and it was cheap. I think I owned this at one point and I got rid of it, but I certainly haven't read it. Lisa Mason, Cyberweb. This is I believe, sequel to her first novel. It's kind of a cyberpunk series, and I can't think of the name of the first one right now, and I don't have it around. But I've mentioned these books before. It's just a cyberpunk series I want to check out. I saw, I think, the spine to this in the background of Outlaw Booksellers videos many months ago, and I tracked down the first one, and now I've got the second. I think it's the second. Yeah, it's the sequel to Arachne. Not sure when I'll get to it. Probably when I get the third, I'll bother getting around to them. A few months ago, I had a book sent to me after we spoke together through a few emails by this author, David Salisbury, self-published. He sent me his first book of the Oris Project, and I read that, and I liked it. And he asked if I was interested in reading the second. I said, sure. I don't know when I'll get to it, but he sent me this, and like, for self-published, the quality is just awesome. It looks good. And he also sent me like a little booklet of what he's done so far for book 3, kind of just a sneak peek. So again, David, thank you for these. I'm looking forward to them. I'm not sure when I'll get to them, but you can be sure that I will mention them on here and talk all about them once I read them. And then another curio, I would much rather have this in paperback, and I almost didn't buy it because I didn't want to spend the money on something like this, but Brian Stableford, Serpent's Blood. I've read a bunch of Stableford, but all of his like Daw published science fiction from the 70s and 80s, whereas this is kind of science fantasy. It's got some crazy cover art, and it just sounds like a fantasy story that takes place in a bizarre landscape with the characters traveling across said landscape. It is a trilogy. I've never even heard of it, and I've been on his wiki page before, so I don't know. I must have just glossed right over this. Super curious. I'll probably read it and get rid of it because I don't need this, unless I absolutely love it, I don't need this giant hardcover. I'll probably give this a try, and if I like it, then I'll buy the rest because I'm iffy on this, but I've loved everything by Brian Stableford that I've read. You never hear many people mention him. And that is it, aside from one other thing that I was super pumped, looking forward to it a couple weeks ago while I was reading the Ringworld books, and then I wasn't getting along with the Ringworld books, so when this arrived in the mail the other day, it was kind of a lackluster event. But this is an old comic from '95, the Omni Comics. I don't think they did this for very long. This is from 1995, and this edition's a big deal because it was like a sneak peek to Ringworld Throne, the 3rd book. So you skip to like the halfway point to get to the Ringworld stuff. And it's, yeah, Omni Comics exclusive, never before seen preview of the new novel. And, whoops. You get this awesome art. Now, the reason I wanted this is because of I thought it might make the story make a little more sense, but by the time I finished it, I just didn't care anymore. But there's also some cool artwork in here, as well as part of Ringworld Throne is literally turned into a comic book here, but it's like the most boring part involving the vampires. So it's really not that interesting. But there are these neat things called Ringworld Tech Files. So there's like those little speeder bikes they use to fly around the Ringworld, and there's just info on it. The visual aids would have been neat, although to be fair, I saw these on Google basically when I was reading the books, but some of them are not so representative. Like this is supposed to be Tila Brown. I don't think anybody pictured Tila Brown like that. Just a random picture of the vampires. I have not read any of this stuff yet. I just looked through it. A really bad picture of Louis Wu. Like, I guess if he were an orc, sure. Still, this is going to be neat to read through. Just a stylized picture of a ship flying through across from the Ringworld, and yeah. Yeah, the characters travel around on these really hard to picture things called cruisers, which were supposed to be made out of wood. And here's a depiction of them. They're from the least intriguing storyline from Ringworld's Throne. I did not picture it like that at all. Yeah, now there is a map. The vampire story arc kind of takes place around like this floating part of the city, and they live underneath in the shade. So I do look forward to looking through this. I think it'll be relevant when I decide to continue with the Ringworld stuff. There's a lot more drawings and diagrams in here, but it just seemed Like a cool curio, and I found it on eBay for very cheap. That's the only reason I bought it. And there's the Hot Needle of Inquiry before its wings were sheared off. Is this the one that had the wings sheared off? That was the second book. No, that was the first book. I already don't remember, but yeah, and then a comic version. And supposedly this picture, this art by John Berkeley is supposed to be a outsider ship. That's the very elusive species in known space that kind of looks like, not octopus, but some sort of, well, squid. They look like squid, and they have very fragile bodies. I don't think their ship would look like that, but yeah, just something neat to have. So I hope to have a little more read in the next couple weeks, so I actually have more to talk about. But as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me through 1,000 subscribers. I still think it's insane, but very awesome. Really made my day when I logged on and saw that. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you next time.